Um, Boiling some water here. I'm going to start the topic of conversation here with carnivore. So it took me quite a few years to feel comfortable eating animals. Again, I have been vegetarian and slash vegan. Um, and it's extremely expensive. And it has more to do with society and the cost of just, you know, working and moving around. And yeah, you can do things when you're prepared through preparation. That goes with anything, but it takes a huge vested interest that with any pursuit takes over your entire life. And I guess as you get older, you start to yield to that fact that, okay, this is an interest, it's not going anywhere, and it's going to take a large portion of my time up. And I think from a more pragmatic sense, it's a given, right? But carnivore really changed the course of my well, when you're talking about energy and you're talking about selfhood, when you're talking about ascertaining and acquiring information and integrating information, isn't that what we are? Isn't that what we are and what we do? Isn't that what being and becoming is all about? Um, so I just boiled water and I just poured it into plastic, and the plastic started melting around it, and it's like, now I'm going to be drinking fucking plastified water. So the carnivore really changed the course of my life. I was allowed to drop 80 pounds in a very short period of time. It was astounding how much weight I had lost in just 1 month. And here I was eating cream cheese. I was actually just living and sleeping in a rideshare vehicle up around the Sacramento area of California. Um, and, still in a high cortisol stress zone personally, around high stress people, traffic situations, the job sucked. So to see what fat adaptation and ketosis can do, the power behind it when nothing has changed but the diet, and that the diet is so randomized in the sense of, okay, you're not supposed to take any carbohydrates in. That's the premise of it. I get it. Let's try that. And having been worked in, in the areas of fitness, personal training for many years, and of course that leads into sports nutrition and just having a general basic understanding of nutrition, nutritional sciences, how that works, even if it's just a relatively basic understanding of a food pyramid and macronutrients and some micronutrients, just to have a general base understanding of that, is plenty for success with the carnivore. It's not like you can just describe the sciences back to people and reiterate what the exact sciences are, nor do you need to. You just need to understand the basics, and that was meat, cheese, and eggs, and everything else is kind of a secondary measure, from erythritol to allulose and other sweeteners. Um, And so I stopped trying to like do videos that are Thomas Delure channel type esque informational supplements, and let the professionals who've been working in it keep on going, and let's all benefit from the information that's readily available, right? So the reason that I'm just sitting here right now is I've done close to 7.5 miles so far on my continuous GIT training, and I am charging the phone up. So I figured, why not make another batch of boiled water, Crystal Light. It's a really bad habit. I'm going to start adding in some allulose um, type sweeteners. Might even create my own. What the hell, right? Um, Maybe do something with allulose and apple cider vinegar or something like that. Something that I can tolerate. Um, but the success that I had on carnivore ketosis was unprecedented for myself, remarkable for myself, because when I would look at a 10-pound decrease in body weight in the past, that meant one hell of a lot of work. That meant one hell of a lot of focus. And when you lose that type of focus, that is, you're no longer led by superficial or surface type goals. You want things to be deeper, more meaningful, and you don't want to divert yourself from that. We have enough to think of in life, right? So there I was working, doing my thing, struggling, trying to survive, buying everything through Walmart, going up and picking up my items, usually every couple of days, not even walking into Walmart, just doing the pre-orders and having the orders brought out to me through mobile ordering. So I would get, cheese, usually roast beef, a lot of times cream cheese because it was just easier to get the calories in. And I was 100% focused on satiety. I was eating based on the satiating aspects of feel good, eat enough calories, focus. And always, water has always been a staple. This month, for the first time, after a good 6 or 7 months, I am completely cutting out protein powder simply because I can't afford for that to be. Really, it's been a third or more of my monthly budget. I can't afford to spend $100 plus on protein powder. I need to be able to eat. So this month, in just not a few days, almost a week coming up, 5, 6 days, I will be going back onto. It's not that I'm off carnivore; it's that I'm out of resources. So yesterday I had some eggs. I could walk up the street and get some eggs later if I need to, or tomorrow. But I had what I call, and I think I've shown this on other live streams, where I make this custard. And this custard is 2 simple ingredients. Well, 3 if you count the water, which is 1 to 2 cups of water, uh, 3 to 5 eggs, depends on how custardy you want it, right? And you're baking this at 350 in a double boiler for exactly 35 minutes. And I'm telling you, it turns out amazing. And you are adding in 1 to 2 scoops of whey protein powder of your choice. So you could get creative on this. This is where these really tasty protein powders that just get very redundant and you wonder why you're even doing it after a while because they're so expensive, but maybe you've got some laying around, exotic flavors that taste really good, but they just don't have that texture and substance, but it tastes just like Fruity Pebbles, or it tastes just like, a certain version of caramel or some other exotic hybrid version of whey protein powder. You add that in with the eggs in this cooking method in a double boiler, and that is, you simply take a larger pot, fill it up. Depending on the depth of the pot, for me, I'll put about a third the way up of filling the pot up completely, because it is a stir fry style pot, and it's the largest pot that we have here. And then I will place a rice cooker insert, a smaller pot, just kind of floating there, almost floating there inside. I'll usually try to preheat both the water and the oven for a good 5 minutes. And then without burning myself, being careful, I will place the supplement in the water. I will then set a timer for 35 minutes, and every single time I have been amazed by the outcome. And so, quick custard, protein custard. You could do the same thing with quick ice cream, where you put nothing but cream. You can either whip the cream, right, heavy cream, or you can just do cream and whey protein, and you freeze it. You put it in the freezer, and then you break up the cream, the heavy cream, like 2 cups of heavy cream to, I'd say you'd have to experiment 1 to 2 scoops of whey protein powder. You put it in the freezer. I suggest covering it up so that it doesn't take on the foul taste or odor of most people's freezers, all the different foods that go in and out of there, all the meat. Highly suggest that you do put something over it, and then every 30 minutes you break down the frozen heavy cream and whey protein mixture, right? And you might really be surprised at what you end up with, because after you do this for about an hour and a half, if you have the patience and the time, you can come up with some really tasty whey protein ice cream. And this is going to help you out with being able to feel not only the satiety, but the flavor that people start to miss when they're on a carnivore or keto type of program. So right now I am charging my phone up. I kind of get to this point where I have to charge my iPod, my earpod container, so that I can switch. I don't know if you go through the same thing, but so that I can switch and charge one earpod while I'm able to listen to, watch things, or do lives, and then switch that around and charge it up for 10 minutes, while the thing's on me, while I'm trying to go. I've completed about 7.5 miles continuous training. I plan on keeping going. Normally I'd be worried about doing some resistance training at this point. But right now I'm really trying to lean out certain areas where I'm having some issues. So the ketosis to carnivore is amazing. Like, you'll drop so much fat, so much weight in such a short period of time. I think I dropped like 20 pounds in the first month. And I was working out, but I wasn't doing any I wasn't doing any walking. I wasn't doing a lot of cardiovascular movement. The fat adaptation and the ketones alone is what did it for me. And I had hit this place where I was like borderline, metabolic syndrome. My metabolism had slowed down. If you go on Rogue Beast Warrior, you'll see where I put up all my results. I was just being transparent. I'd get up, flex my muscles, show my fat ass, and it's like, oh my God, the difference and how fast I lost was amazing. However, in these pocketed regions, in these areas, like below your armpits, or where you have a genetic propensity for gaining weight, the lower belly fat is the top spot for the highest number of fat cells with pretty much everybody, unless you're a total anomaly. Age has a lot to do with it, hormones, but it was amazing because by month 2, I was already down to 214 pounds. Whereas with clothes on and everything, I was pushing up around 240 pounds. So I have a relatively small frame, which makes me, I always use that to my advantage, where it's like I look much larger if I wore an extra small t-shirt, right, to where you could see the pronounced muscle tapering, right, to smaller bone structure and wrist circumference. So that seems kind of like a superficial topic, but it does lead into areas that I've discussed before, where it's like form follows function, function into form. You need to work on yourself on every area to become the form. And you can't get sucked up into these pocketed areas of superficial traps. And that is literally traps, like your trapezoids. Like once you start to look like you're a muscle head and you start to behave that way, you're no longer animated through the spirit or the soul. One area, when we talk about like a propensity, one area has gained interest over the other, and there's now a superficial quest to continue on in a speculative area that doesn't really even exist, i.e., this sort of superficial symmetry or the battle against asymmetry, you know. And so, quite simply, that carnivore diet does the trick, but then you are sacrificing animals. And it gets into the spiritual aspects that we talk about here on this channel, is that um, to be in harmony and the sacrifice, like it seems like you can't get anything done and get anywhere without this principle or the principle breach occurring in some point at some time. And so you could look at it like, okay, we've got pea protein. There are plenty of other resources that you can turn to. But when we look at the sacrifice of flavor, when we look at the conditioning of eating meat, when we look at the nostalgia and the connection with our family union, that is our get-togethers, our holidays, our um, uh, the thing that takes us away from the monotony and the sadness. Um, you have to be able to leave that behind, and a lot of people aren't prepared for that, right? They're not prepared for that, especially when you're still in society, still going to work. And so religions tend to be that fix where people will only eat certain foods, regions, races, times, eras. You'll see that, you know, food and food availability has a lot to do with this. And so I think that staying healthy with the seasons, staying healthy with nutrition, was always a viable tool that I recommended by Elson Haas. Really great piece of literature, good food, um, and seasonally based. So, you know, certain vegetables you're going to be eating more of because, like cruciferous vegetables, they're more available during winter months. Summer, you know, you have more of the cucumber water, things like this. So, you know, you might have more lemon and things like this. You might utilize lemon differently, you know, but that whole alkalizing aspect with it in congruency with whether or not you're going to be drinking a lot of water, you're going to be drinking a lot of hot liquid beverages, what those beverages are going to be. That when you talk about beverages that are specific to cultural beverages, a lot of times they're filled up with calories that don't translate well to the time that we're in, where we are judged on a superficial scale, but even more so, this gets into the eye of the beholder, is the fact that if you weren't judged on that level, a lot of us deviate, gain a bunch of weight, like I did, because you're no longer, you almost feel like there's a rebellion, but something else was standing in a hierarchy, as above you, as a principal protocol, the purveyor of principles, and that society became the check mark, even from the aesthetic standpoint, and it was no longer intrinsic and within you, and may have never been so. So it's highly important to teach yourself principles, and all principles are based around this axiomatic system that's based around the purity or purification. And that I've always, like, if there's one thing that I'm preaching about, it's the fact that anyone can purify, and no matter what you've done, and that it's not that you're going to be trusted to watch kids. It's not that you're going to be accepted in a subgroup or in a cultural group. That's not the goal, is not integration, right? Because integration's happening whether we like it or not. It's happening all around us. Assimilation is happening. Information integration and assimilation that's the time we are in right now. But that you can look at your life. You're no longer looking at yourself from an existential view. You're not looking at yourself through society's eyes at yourself. You're really taking serious that, wow, I've done some terrible things, or I've really breached myself and my own principles, and I have committed some things that in view of where I am now, throughout, that's just the road I came in on, through the rigors of life. You're now sitting there at this seat where it's like, my soul is on the line and principles are important. And once you acknowledge that, that is where EPL, for me, Esoteric Principles of Light, kicked into play. It became of the most grand most importance to address that. And a lot of us have to have what I've referred to as, and you can look the word up, metanoia, right? So it's just met being that successive unit of measure, right? But it's also a reference back to life, and it's a reference of well, like metacognition, metaphysics, the metabolic equivalent unit. You know, it is a unit of life through the transitory aspect, right? It is ontology, if you really want to get down to it. So it's like an ontological unit, if you will. But it's also something that can be very used and abused. And I guess there's always the inference of an eschatological mechanism as an extreme measure, right? When you're measuring anything that is heaven and hell, good and evil, top and bottom. But what you're really looking at is a unit of energy, a unit of time, a Max Planck system of measure, right? Measurability, variability, and how things coalesce and patternize into a foreseeable pattern that we can look at as an algorithm, and that best describes, comes down into functionality, our daily function, how we approach things, a systemological approach to things, right? So I just want to close that up about the carnivore and ketosis. The fact that, yes, it would be amazing if we could come across available proteins that didn't involve animal protein. I'm planning on doing carnivore all month, beginning on the 8th, in just a few days' time, 6 days. Actually, the morning of the 9th, and I'm going to be focusing on affordable foods that can keep me on that. I'll throw some recipes up here as I'm pulling them out through my walk, but I'm going to be doing, like, I have been doing drumsticks, where I cover the drumsticks in oil. Unfortunately, when you freeze the drumsticks, you're no longer getting the same crisp as when you just take them fresh out of the refrigerator. As you know, chicken, you're not going to be able to leave it in your refrigerator too long. You really want to bake it up or cook it up as quickly as possible. So I'm going to be purchasing meat, eggs, cheese. I'm going to be doing heavy cream because I love heavy cream. I'm going to be getting allulose and erythritol for some flavor. and possibly even putting a little bit of dark Hershey's chocolate, unsweetened chocolate, in my coffee, because I find that flavor is something that we miss. You have a little bit of, cocoa powder, which is very good for you, along with maybe a little cinnamon, which is great for pancreatic response and your blood sugar and so forth. And I think that everything from curry to garlic is often not looked at with enough credit nor scrutiny for the myriad of benefits that are supplied, and that when you're putting together any sort of program, any sort of nutritional dietary guide, you really have to look at your spices and the availability of those spices. So I'm going to be using real mayonnaise. Unfortunately, it's very hard to find real mayonnaise without some sugar in it, um, even though it's not much sugar. So be careful when you are using mayonnaise that you're only using like 1 to 2 tablespoons, even though it says that there's 0 grams. You're getting a gram or two of the worst kind of carbohydrates, which is refined sugar. But I'm going to be covering the chicken drumsticks in mayo when I bake them, and I'm following a real simple process where I'm going to be also adding in oil with that, um, just lathering them up prior to baking, and putting everything from salt, pepper, dash of cayenne, and some granulated garlic in there with it, and probably baking those Foster Farm drumsticks from Walmart, that are about $4.50 for 12 to 13 drumsticks, large drumsticks. And I'll be baking those for about 40 minutes, non-frozen, at anywhere between 400 degrees Fahrenheit to 425 Fahrenheit. And I'll be, spending $4.50, $5 a day on that. When you add that up, you got 7 times 5. So that's like half your budget for the week, right? So I'm also going to be keeping ample eggs around. The Walmart eggs aren't that cheap. They actually, sometimes you can get them for under like 25 cents an egg, but it's usually kind of hovering around there. I've been buying the Eggland eggs. Whatever the cheapest eggs are is what I'm going for, but eggs are a great source of, being able to have a viable source of omega-3, vitamin A, things that are very important. And, I'd highly suggest that you get a mineral supplement that has trace minerals or colloidal minerals, and try to put those mineral supplements in any diet that you might have, any sort of dietary method or mode that you're on. Down the road, when I'm putting a little bit more muscle on, I will be cycling in carbohydrates. Right now, I'm going through the same painful process that I have for months, which is I'm walking myself down practically into nothing, trying to get rid of this stored fat, this really stubborn fat under my armpits and around my midsection, where I'm extremely lean, but you just have these malingering fat cells. And so for what I'm going for, which is total HD definition, um, which is something that I did for years, it's more of a mark of me, and it's showing a process and a pattern of how the diet, how the nutrition, how the focus on uh, training, and what my philosophy is on training, to its own junction point, is coming into fruition, coming into be. That form follows function, function into form, and then getting onto a maintenance program, which will be heavily based on a prescriptive program that'll have what I'm pretty much doing now, is on a weekly basis, and sometimes just on a monthly basis, I'll break into a carbohydrate loading very brief period of time, let's say like 1 to 2 times per month, to fully load on carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, specifically centered around very high fiber sources of carbohydrates. And when I can afford it, it's a lot of vegetables, and just, you know, tons of, from curry to garlic, as I said, and on, just a myriad of different spices and accompanying um, micronutrients, and a wide variety of vegetables. And yeah, buying vegetables in general is extremely expensive right now. You know, we're having to go back into staples. So again, for me, carnivore is the easy answer. And so I'll be able to get things that I haven't been able to get in the past, like cheese. And I'm going to be eating like that all month, throughout the entire month. And that's why this week is so important. And for me to even go into what I'm having to do is all I've got left at the end of the month, because of the very expensive protein powder, and why I'm skipping it next month, is because I come to this place where things are so slim. I've got nothing, and but protein powder. And that's kind of why I got the protein powder, is boxing myself into this place where I have to do a protein fast. Like, I'm having to go on to a protein fast at this point, and also running out of fresh water. I'm having to boil water and drink Crystal Light infused boiled water instead of fresh water. And I just poured hot water, or I even saw the plastic of this 1 gallon container, crystal geyser container, melt and change shape. I'm wondering, should I just be throwing that away? But at this point, how bad can it be? It can't be any worse than the freaking tap water that I'm drinking. You know, at least I boiled it and killed most of the microorganisms. So next month to look out for is a lot of resistance training, maybe even a migration into the gym. That's been the plan. Is February has been planned out for the last couple of months, past few months, or more, as that time where I'm getting a 360 cam. I'm getting back into the gym. I'm doing traditional resistance training, but I really wanted to go in completely shredded, where I didn't have any of these strange fatty pocketed areas. And I literally have like cellulite, disgusting cellulite, packed underneath my left armpit and around my chest from, let's face it, being obese and grossly overweight not 7 to 9 months ago. So yes, the carnivore was pivotal in that, took a lot of the guesswork away. And I can tell you 100% that I don't want to be behind the initiative of killing any more animals, or the disgusting treatment of animals, or, to be preaching on the pulpit, and saying, yeah, everybody needs to do carnivore. But the carnivore is that pivotal aspect at present for being able to drop a massive amount of weight in a very short period of time, or not. And so it's a decision making process. So in the near future, I would like to be doing more of a Mediterranean style diet. The Mediterranean diet works, particularly, for flavor and satiety. If you never go into these stressful periods, or these, you know, self-deprecation, these periods where the lack of care and the lack of regard for self has you in a place where you have done so much damage that you're several pounds overweight and you're way outside your natural set point, right? And take that for what it is. So I should have plenty of charge. In the next few minutes, my hot water should be cooled off enough to where I can go back in and start sipping on my Crystal Light mix. And again, I'm going to try to amend that next month as well. Probably not next month since I have so much crystal light, but I'll be playing with it because I'll have erythritol and I'll have allulose and I'll be able to maybe get my hands pretty easily on some apple cider vinegar or whatnot, which was a staple of what I had done for a very long period of time. So this is just my success on carnivore, my plans to go back on carnivore next month, my transition away from carnivore toward a very healthy, um, bodybuilding promoting um, lifestyle, using more Mediterranean type cuisine focus, and really trying to focus in on pure and focused ketosis patterns, along with supercompensation loading phases where I'm taking in very high quality carbohydrate sources, because I really believed in the past that when you're training really hard and you want to have this pronounced look of extreme leanness with large, hard musculature without using any sort of drugs or shortcuts, in that moment when you are completely carb loaded, and to be as lean as and vascular as possible means that you are going to have to be stretching your muscle cell out from the inside. And that means carbohydrate to hydrate the cell, to overhydrate the cell, to over supercompensation, to pack large amount of carbohydrates into the cell. And bodybuilders would use things like dextrose, and that's where the whole eating crispy, a whole sheet or two sheets of Krispy Kremes prior to a competition come into play, where you just see boom through all those monosaccharides, you just see the vascularity pop out, right? But the damage that you're doing to yourself, where you're gaining fat in those really targeted areas, and then you have to deal with it all over again, and it throws off your appetite and everything else. It's not a healthy thing to do, right? Once we're getting up on a stage and once we're going through that unhealthy process of this is me on display, there has to be a healthy transition that we can go through, this sort of verbal transitory process where it's like, no, the transition should be healthy as well. And that's where fruits come into play, you know, where you could do a fruit smoothie that was packed with sugar, with enough variety of fruits to where you didn't need, and a little bit of honey to where you would get that, but you're not always going to be able to look like you just stepped up off the stage. Some people can come close. I certainly, came fairly close for many years when I was drawing business in based on how I looked and the performance of how I was able to do the methods that I talked about as a trainer for myself. That's certainly an intriguing and billing and billable methodology to show what you believe in, what you do on a practical scale of this is who I am. Like when people just meet you in person, oh, I want to look like me, but I want to look like you in the sense that I want to achieve the things that you achieved. How'd you do it? And then you're really just talking about almost like a philosophical school of thought of this is how it, and this is what I'm talking about right now. And this is the importance of me talking about that is, about this particular subject is this is my core methodology. These are my principles, even more importantly. These are the arms of the principles, and this is why I'm making these particular choices through a protocol, through a system, as to say that my system runs concurrent and my system is valid, right? So, are there better things than the carnivore? Well, just break down the constituents of the protein, the fat, but more so the bioavailable proteins, and how if we take in proteins that are closest to our own tissues, and even more so the cravings that we are raised with, but from a genetic sense, the things that to down to an epigenetic sense of what we crave a priori, um, we need to start re-engineering through generations what people crave, what our offspring craves, and that it doesn't have to be this amino acid paste from the Matrix, but who knows? Maybe that wouldn't taste so bad to us if that's what we were conditioned through this time space event to enjoy. So I'm going to be going back online in a few minutes and reintegrating my walk and into my live stream, and that's where I'll probably be going live on Stellar Mass 13, the annex or Tritary station that is involved with this, where I show on Rogue Beast Warrior, I show the superficial aspects of this is the practicum of what I do. This is me as a personal trainer. I'm still a personal trainer, an advanced personal trainer, a core conditioning specialist by certification, and I'm still a PES, a CES, a performance enhancement specialist, a corrective exercise specialist, a share care certified online trainer. I've also had certifications from the NSCA, AFA, ACE as a personal trainer, among many others. I have worked for large brand organizations as a personal trainer along with myself. And I've gotten amazing results in the far distant past. And let's face it, in recent times, as a man who's in his mid 50s, I've gotten remarkable results where I have around a 30 to a 31-inch waist at present time. When I want to make it smaller, I can very quickly and easily, but right now I'm kind of building up on my core. I'm building up on the core muscles. So I'm going to have a little bit thicker back muscles, a little bit thicker transverse abdominis, right? And I'm working on, being able to transition this effort into a leaner and leaner physique, because that is an area of interest of mine. And that is that if we follow a very healthy protocol, when you look at the statuary of the Greco-Roman era, it wasn't really as far distant past, but some people like to use the word ancients, right? That we aren't really that far from being able to practice these Platonic truths that follow through from the way we eat, the way that we do things, and the way that we patternize the things that we do from a principle protocol or from the mechanism of principles. So we want to reverberate the principles and the principle protocol that we follow, so that there is no discrepancy, there is no arguing point of, oh, you didn't follow your principles, your guiding principles axiomatically through your lifetime of how you eat, how you go about your day, the things that you do. You claim one thing, and yet you seem to perform another. And when you get into the concept of what is heretical, or what a hypocrite is, um, you know, it gets into that area. So anyway, I'm gonna call it a live on this, and this was 100% focused around carnivore, why I'm doing carnivore, and why I'm transitioning away from carnivore, and why it is so important for us to focus in on having a diet where we're not having to ritualistically kill, maim, and abuse other creatures in order to satisfy something that we ourselves have grown to enjoy, that we have grown to get used to through genetics and epigenetic means, and that we have to start adopting healthier attributes and healthier ways of doing things that are an improvement on what we do and follow true to. And that's probably focusing in on, instead of Monsanto manipulation. In fact, it definitely is. It's utilizing and using our discovery through science and nutrition to not, be hypocrites, but to better serve our needs and our children's needs and the needs of the future through the mechanism of technology and technological prowess and means.